Mötley Crüe has had a great run. I'm touring until I cannot move anymore. And then after that, when they bury me, I'm still going to have a Mötley Crüe record playing up a tube. Tommy would dig me up and use my bones for drumsticks.
At the age of 73, Mick Mars shocked everyone by telling the world some serious things about Mötley Crüe. He said they cut him out of getting his fair share of money and did lots of sneaky things to take away his control of the band. But those things, he said, were just the start of a much bigger and more complicated story. What's really happening? Let's look closer at what went wrong between Mick Mars and Mötley Crüe. Mick Mars was born in 1951 in Terre Haute, Indiana. His real name is Robert Allendale. He grew up in a family that didn't have much money, and he started playing music when he was a teenager. Before he became famous for glam metal music, Mars spent almost 20 years playing in small bands in California that nobody knew about. He kept failing and switching to different bands. All those years of people saying no to him made him tough and gave him that rough style that made him famous when he helped start Mötley Crüe in 1981. Right from the beginning, Mick Mars was super important in making Mötley Crüe sound the way they did. While the other guys in the band were known for acting wild and living crazy lives, Mars stayed focused on making good music and playing guitar really well. He was the one who came up with the name Mötley Crüe after hearing someone say they looked like a motley-looking crew. That idea not only helped create the band's brand, but it also showed what kind of person he was. The biggest difference between Mick Mars and the rest of Mötley Crüe was how hard he worked. While the other guys followed whatever was popular in metal music, Mars stuck to old-school blues rock, making heavy, deep guitar sounds that you hear in famous songs like Kickstart My Heart, Girls, 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 and Dr. Feelgood. People who worked with him in music studios said that Mars was always the first person to show up and the last person to leave. He always carried around a notebook where he wrote down technical notes about every guitar solo. Mick Mars worked even harder when you think about the bone disease he has. When Mars was 17 years old, doctors told him he had something called ankylosing spondylitis. This is a sickness that never goes away and makes his backbone bones slowly stick together. It's a really rare disease that causes constant pain and makes it very hard to move around. According to medical papers that Mars showed during a court case in 2023, he had surgery on his spine in 2004. Doctors put metal rods in his back to help him stand up straight, and he has to deal with pain every single day just to perform music. Even though he had health problems, Mars never let his sickness control his career. For more than 40 years, he was part of every album they recorded in the studio, every tour, and every big event. Music industry professionals have said many times that most of the guitar parts you hear on their albums were played completely by Mars himself without any help or fake computer tricks. Sound engineers at Elektra Records, the company that made many of the band's albums, noticed that Mars was the only band member who always carried his guitar everywhere, even during interviews with reporters and when they were backstage. Unlike his bandmates, Mars was almost never involved in scandals about using drugs, getting in fights, or having legal problems during Mötley Crüe's most successful years. He was quiet and kept to himself, which meant the media didn't pay much attention to him, but he was like a steady musical foundation for the band. Hard rock and metal websites like Blabbermouth and Metal Sludge have done surveys that show Mars is the most respected member of the group, especially because he was consistent and refused to follow money-making trends. What he accomplished by himself is enough to make him a legend in rock history. Over 100 million records sold with Mötley Crüe, dozens of tours around the world, and recognition from places like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Even though the band hasn't been officially put in the Hall of Fame yet. But behind all the fame lies a long time of quietly dealing with constant physical pain and feeling alone. This is something the public has only recently started to understand. The leaving that got changed around. On October 26, 2022, Mick Mars officially announced that he was stopping touring with Mötley Crüe, saying his health problems meant he couldn't keep up with the band's tough concert schedule anymore. His statement was very clear. He said he was still an official member of the band, just stepping back from live concerts without giving up his membership or his share of the group. This news was quickly picked up by big news outlets like Variety, Billboard, and Rolling Stone, and it got a lot of attention from fans. Right after that, Mötley Crüe put out their own press statement saying that a new guitar player would replace Mick Mars for the rest of the stadium tour with Def Leppard. John Five, who was known for working with Marilyn Manson and Rob Zombie, was announced as the replacement. What the press release said made people ask questions. There were no details saying that Mars was still a band member, and no mention of how royalties or profits would be shared after he stopped touring. The way the band's announcement described Mars as someone who had finished his job made people doubt if they were being honest. What changed the situation was how the band handled the media in the weeks that followed. Promotional materials for the tour completely removed Mick Mars' picture. News about John 5 replacing him caused controversy among fans. Before joining Mötley Crüe, John 5 had been close friends with several band members, especially Nikki Sixx. Some music trade publications like Ultimate Classic Rock suggested that Mars' replacement had been planned ahead of time. Even though no fight was made public, people said Mick Mars was surprised by how fast everything happened and felt like he was pushed out without anyone asking him what he thought. It's important to know that within Mötley Crüe, Mick Mars always had an independent role, staying away from personal drama or business deals that weren't about music. This helped him keep a clean reputation, but it also meant his opinion didn't matter as much when the band made decisions. According to people who knew what was happening behind the scenes, Mars was often not at financial meetings, which led to his voting rights being reduced, even though he still owned a big share of the Mötley Crüe brand. In the months after he stopped touring, Mick Mars didn't say anything publicly. He stayed quiet on social media, said no to interview requests, and avoided any events related to Mötley Crüe. But by late January 2023, reporters found out he had quietly met with lawyers in Los Angeles, preparing legal papers about his rights within the group. This was later confirmed by Deadline, showing that Mars didn't accept being removed without his agreement and was preparing a planned response. Another thing worth noting was how the remaining band members handled the media. Nikki Sixx kept posting unclear statements on Twitter about needing team spirit and the new high-energy lineup without mentioning Mick Mars. Tommy Lee shared rehearsal photos with John 5 while Vince Neil stayed completely quiet. These actions were seen by some fans as disrespectful to someone who had been with the group for over 4 decades. As the situation got worse, veteran artists like Dee Snider from Twisted Sister and Tracy Guns from LA. Guns spoke out in support of Mick Mars, calling Mötley Crüe's treatment of a founding member a clear betrayal. Major forums in the metal community like Reddit Metalcore and Blabbermouth opened discussion threads analyzing the legal implications, clearly showing that the internal fight within the band could no longer be hidden. The withdrawal from touring had become the starting point of a far more complex series of events that were about to unfold. The lawsuit papers revealed. On April 6, 2023, Mick Mars officially filed a lawsuit against Mötley Crüe in the Los Angeles County Superior Court, starting an unprecedented public legal battle in the band's history. According to details reported by Variety, Mars accused the remaining members of illegally and immorally working together to kick him out and of cutting his profit share on their own in an attempt to remove him from making decisions. At the center of the lawsuit was a fight over ownership shares. Mars said he still owned 25% of the group, and that reducing his share to 5% was done without any legitimate agreement within the band. His lawyer said that the other members, through their private lawyers and the band's CFO, had changed the money distribution terms by themselves, even though Mars never signed any paper saying he was quitting or giving up his rights. Importantly, the lawsuit revealed behind-the-scenes details that were never made public before. In a part quoted by Rolling Stone, Mick Mars said he had been forced to prove he could still perform through personal tests. He described this as a form of humiliation and degradation, especially given his status as an original member. According to Mars, none of the other 3 members had ever been made to do similar things. On music forums and social media, many argued that Mars was being made a scapegoat in a group increasingly driven by money interests. Some industry figures, including veteran journalist Eddie Trunk, suggested that Mars had the most distinctive playing style and that continuing the band without him would weaken its core musical value. Loudwire published an article noting that Mars' claims aligned with a broader pattern of internal restructuring used by many major bands to maximize financial gain. Beyond financial and performance-related disputes, a key part of the lawsuit addressed brand ownership. Mars claimed he remained a co-owner of the Mötley Crüe name and had voting rights on major decisions. The band's continued use of the name without his approval was seen as a violation of long-standing partnership principles. Mars' legal team said they were considering a motion to stop the band from using the name unless a clear agreement was reached. The legal battle also began affecting the band's credibility with business partners. According to industry sources, several brands that had sponsored past tours reached out for clarification. International event organizers like Live Nation were said to be closely watching the lawsuit's developments as it could affect future tour contracts. As of mid-2024, the case hadn't reached a final ruling, but it already caused lasting fallout. Regardless of the outcome, the lawsuit's revelations have damaged Mötley Crüe's public image. For Mick Mars, this isn't just a legal battle. It's a fight to defend his honor and personal legacy. After more than 4 decades of contributing to American hard rock, while the band moves forward with its new lineup and avoids addressing the controversy, Mick Mars has taken a different path. He has chosen not to fight back with words, but instead launched an independent music project for the first time under his own name, marking a completely new chapter. The team behind the album included experienced musicians Paul Taylor, a keyboard player known for Winger and Alice Cooper, Jacob Bunton on lead vocals, Chris Randall on bass, and Ray Luzier on drums from Korn. The presence of these established names showed that this wasn't a personal experiment, but a strategic release aimed at redefining Mick Mars' musical identity post-Mötley Crüe. The opening track, Loyal to the Lie, immediately caught attention with heavy guitar sounds, pounding rhythms, and an intensely angry tone. The song was viewed by critics as a direct response from Mars to the accusations made by his former band. In an interview with Guitar World, he said, "I don't need to write a statement. I just let the guitar do the talking." Most of the other tracks, including Killing Breed, Right Side of Wrong, and Ready to Roll, revolve around themes of betrayal, defiance, and standing up for yourself. Musically, The Other Side of Mars received good reviews from critics. Kerrang! Magazine called it the most personal and honest album Mars has ever made. "I need the studio. That's where I truly live." Notably, Mars confirmed that he's already working on a second album expected to be released by the end of 2025. The next project is described as more electronic in tone, experimenting with ambient and industrial rock. He revealed that he's working with an emerging female artist in the alternative scene, though her name hasn't been disclosed. Mars' goal is to continue challenging himself and remain completely independent of any past legacy. In addition, The Other Side of Mars serves as a personal artistic statement. It's not just a music album, but clear evidence that Mick Mars doesn't need the fame of Mötley Crüe to maintain his influence. While most artists of his generation choose retirement or reunion tours, Mars chose to step out of the band's shadow and assert his independent identity. He said, "If one day we play together again, it has to be for the music, not for a contract or a festival lineup." That comment was immediately quoted widely across media channels, especially given that Mötley Crüe continues to perform with a new lineup without the man who helped shape the band's signature sound. Throughout his reflections, Mars focused on the personal lessons learned from the fallout. He revealed that he now spends most of his time at home in Nashville doing physical therapy to maintain mobility and working in the studio. Although he no longer performs live, he continues to practice guitar daily and compose new music as a form of mental therapy. The current image of Mick Mars is that of an independent artist, rarely seen in public, but deeply respected within the music community. At major rock festivals like Hellfest France and Aftershock USA, many younger bands have openly credited him as an influence in guitar style and production philosophy. On platforms like YouTube and podcasts, channels dedicated to classic rock regularly feature segments on Mars, analyzing each album, each solo, and how he has preserved his artistic identity over decades. For Mick Mars' upcoming 75th birthday celebration, expected in 2026, several veteran music journalists have proposed nominating him for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, not just as a Mötley Crüe member, but as a solo artist. According to an analysis by Music Business Worldwide, Mars' influence has grown noticeably since the lawsuit, reflecting a public shift toward valuing transparency, integrity, and long-term artistic dedication over superficial glamour. Mars himself rarely talks about awards or recognition. In a conversation with Metal Hammer at the end of 2024, when asked how it felt to have laid the truth bare, he responded simply, "I didn't speak to win. I spoke to stay true to myself." As of now, Mars remains silent on whether he plans to re-engage in any form of collaboration with Mötley Crüe. Legal teams on both sides are still negotiating, though no terms have been disclosed. Meanwhile, he remains firmly committed to his independent creative path, stating he will only release new information when "I'm ready mentally and artistically." Though no longer standing on brightly lit stages with the band, Mick Mars still holds his place as an irreplaceable figure in American classic rock. And at 73, he hasn't chosen to fade away. He's rewriting his final chapter through the sound of his guitar and the clarity of his words. What do you think about Mick Mars' revelations? Leave a comment below and let us know your thoughts after this video. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay updated with our latest content.